Chris Paul is a man who's so good at playing point guard that other players call him a god. He'll definitely get into the Basketball Hall of Fame on his first try. He might be the best ever at his position. Chris is a great leader on the court. I'm sure they'll play tough defense too. There will be lots of energy behind them. Chris is really fun to watch. I feel honored to be compared to him. And when people mention our names together, I'm honored. I am the best pure point god in the NBA. The point god himself is still CP3. But even with his amazing skills that people call godlike, Chris Paul somehow ended up with one of the most argued about careers of any modern day superstar. 10 straight, the lead back up to 9. Oh, Chris Paul goes down hard on his back. Why don't people like him? People think he's like a politician. People don't trust politicians. He does things in the locker room that some teammates don't like. When dealing with bosses and coaches, people think it's sneaky. He does, Chris does sneaky stuff, like, people don't know that's a little dirty. Mother, man, Chris knows that too, man. Tell Chris Paul to mind your business and get out of my way. He's 5th all-time in steals and 3rd all-time in assists, and yet we still wonder, how good was Chris Paul in his best years actually? Chris Paul was born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Chris Paul, or CP3, as his family nicknamed him, was taught basketball by his dad and his older brother, CPs 1 and 2 respectively. With their help, Chris became a talented AAU player and went on to average an amazing 25.5 points and 4 assists as a junior in high school. But even with those great stats, Chris didn't start getting attention from the whole country until his senior year. That's when he scored an incredible 61 points in one game to honor his grandfather who had died going into the game. Chris kept his goals secret, but people watching could tell something big was about to happen when Chris scored 24 points in just the second quarter. Then late in the fourth quarter, Chris stepped up to the free throw line and scored his 61st point. He missed the second shot on purpose because I knew that at this moment in time, this is something I would never forget. From there, Chris Paul's fame only grew. As a freshman in college, Chris won the ACC Rookie of the Year award and was named to the All-American team. He led Wake Forest to their first ever #1 ranking. Then, after mastering college basketball, after just 1 year, with the 4th pick in the 2004 NBA draft, the New Orleans Hornets picked Chris Paul from Wake Forest University. Rookie Chris Paul took the NBA by storm. He showed amazing skills at passing, shooting, and handling the ball right from the start. In 2005, Chris played so much better than the other rookies that not only did he win Rookie of the Year, but he ended the season leading all rookies in points, assists, steals, and double-doubles. His second year, Chris got even better. He improved his stats in all the important areas, averaging an amazing 8.9 assists per game. By his third year, Chris had proven himself as one of the best point guards in the game. He won his first assist title and led the New Orleans Hornets to the playoffs. That's when Chris took things to a whole other level. In his very first playoff game, Chris scored a career-high 35 points. They beat the Dallas Mavericks in an amazing 104-92 point win. In his second game, Chris broke a team record by getting a whopping 17 assists. This included an amazing pass to high-flying Tyson Chandler. Chandler is scoring 2 hands for safety, please. with New Orleans beating the Mavericks in just 5 games. Chris had proven himself, and the Hornets were a team to watch out for. They made the playoffs in each of the next 3 seasons. Then, like often happens with stars on small teams, Chris Paul asked to be traded. At this point in his career, Chris had clearly grown too big for New Orleans. He needed a team with better management and better players. By all accounts, that team seemed to be the Los Angeles Lakers going into the 2011 trade deadline. A deal with the Lakers seemed almost certain. The league's best shooting guard was going to play next to the league's best point guard. It was almost unfair. That's exactly why the league's commissioner David Stern said no to it and set up another trade with Los Angeles's other basketball team, the Los Angeles Clippers. They got nicknamed Lob City because they loved doing The 2011 Clippers were the hottest team in the NBA, with lots of new weapons to pass to. Chris Paul's assist numbers went way up. For 4 years straight, Chris led the league in assisted field goal percentage. He helped with an amazing 48.9% of the Clippers' field goals over that time. The Clippers didn't just benefit from Chris's offense, but his defense too. As a Clipper, Chris led the league in steals for 4 years as well. So once again, Chris had taken a not-so-great NBA team and led them back to the playoffs, or, well, at least the second round of the playoffs. For 7 straight painful seasons, Clippers fans watched their great regular season team turn into a pumpkin inn or before reaching the second round. Whether it was injuries or suspensions or just awful coaching, the Clippers just couldn't get their act together when it mattered. So after 7 years of failing to reach the conference finals, the Clippers made a difficult decision. At 32 years old, Chris needed to start over. And where better to land than at the home of the reigning MVP James Harden and the Houston Rockets? It was perfect. Chris's skills as a pick-and-roll ball handler worked perfectly with rim-running big man Clint Capella. With Chris's help handling some of the ball responsibilities, the Beard's notoriously bad defense started to get better. Then, after 30 long years, it finally happened. Chris made it to the Western Conference Finals, but he hurt his hamstring and missed the last 2 games of the series, even though his success in the regular season led the Rockets to re-sign the 32-year-old superstar. Chris's time with the Rockets quickly went bad. In October of the following year, Chris got into a fight with Rajon Rondo and was suspended for 6 games. In December, Chris hurt his hamstring and couldn't play for 5 weeks. If all that wasn't enough, it was the end of the 2019 season that really sealed the deal. The Rockets lost in the playoffs again too. Who else but the Golden State Warriors going into his 14th year? Chris still hadn't reached the NBA Finals. This made many NBA experts wonder, had Chris Paul lost his magic? Apparently, the Rockets had similar doubts because in the summer of 2019, with 2 years still left on his contract, Chris Paul was traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder. With his reputation at an all-time low, veteran Chris Paul found himself stuck on a rebuilding OKC team. But if the critics thought Chris Paul was just going to give up and become unimportant, they were wrong. Chris took OKC's mixed-up roster and turned them into a well-working team. OKC needed a leader on and off the court, and Chris fit that role perfectly. He especially took 20-year-old guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander under his wing. Yeah, it was big. A guy like Chris, a guy you grow up watching, giving you words of advice and kind of building your confidence a little bit. That can only help so much. Chris took a directionless Thunder team and turned them into an 8th seed in the competitive West. He rebuilt his reputation and reminded the world that Chris Paul was indeed still the point guard. In doing so, he also earned himself a new home with the Phoenix Suns. Building off their momentum from an undefeated bubble run, the Suns were a point guard away from taking things to the next level. Chris proved to be exactly what they needed. Chris took his leadership role from OKC and brought it to the desert. He led the Suns back to the playoffs for the first time in 10 years. Then on his fifth team and in his 10th season, the impossible happened. Chris Paul made the NBA Finals. Unfortunately, he lost. He could have went and joined a team like the Lakers or anybody else that were favored as contenders to go try to chase a ring. No, he didn't take a shortcut. He went to the Phoenix Suns where they had young players, where they drafted players, and he went and got it in the trenches. He went and got it out of the mud. Okay, so I know that was a lot, but let's get back to the question. How good was Chris Paul in his best years, actually? Even though it was early in his career, most people would say Chris Paul's prime was between 2007 and 2009 while he was playing for the Hornets. In that time, Chris recorded the highest assist, steal, and point totals of his career. His shooting percentages were also the highest of his career at that time as well. He nearly averaged 5.04.090 as he was his team's #1 scoring option. But beyond that, what makes Chris Paul so special wasn't his prime, but his continued success over the course of his entire career. Not only has Chris averaged over 10 assists per game with 3 different teams, but he did so in 3 different decades. He finished top 5 in MVP voting as a 21-year-old and as a... If that isn't continued success, I don't know what to tell you. So even though he's never won a championship, Chris Paul's status as one of the best point guards to ever play the game is unquestionable. From his leadership to his playmaking to his unquestionable heart, Chris Paul really is the point god